Tharp. I'm the program director for the Bachelor of Science in Digital Marketing Technology at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. This is our second fireside chat about search engine optimization. Today we're going to be talking about off-the-page optimization. Our guest today is a regular instructor with our class in SEO at UW-Stout. He's from Thomson Reuters. His name's Kerry Fager, and I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I am a senior digital marketer at FindLaw. It's a business within Thomson Reuters. And currently I am working remotely in Los Angeles, but I make visits now and again back to our home base in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. I've been doing digital marketing for about 9 years. Most of it has been focused on local SEO specifically, and then sort of bleeding into social media and more recently some reputation management areas. So I've kind of had my hands on a lot of different areas.
All right, so Kerry's got a unique perspective on all this. He's been doing SEO for almost as long as anybody who's been doing it out there. He's I guess this has been his primary career, and so there's not many people that can say they've been doing SEO for a long time and it's been their only career. So wealth of knowledge. We're looking forward to tapping into the information that he has today. So when you're looking at search engine optimization, there's a lot of factors that come into it. In our first fireside chat, we talked about the on-the-page SEO, the things that you have total control of because they live on your site. That is a place where it's really easy to make a difference. Today, we're going to be talking about off-the-page SEO. So when you're looking at the search ecosystem, this is the places where the rest of the world has influence on your visibility, on your brand, on all of your things. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up to Kerry and see which direction we're going to go with this. We've kind of got some questions scoped out. If we follow those exactly, great. If not, the tangents are where these things are kind of fun. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Kerry, and see what you got to say.
Yeah, and like you said, when we talk about offsite SEO, I mean, really, if you want to make it as simple as possible, there's onsite and then there's offsite, and then there's stuff where they overlap. And technically, you could say offsite SEO is everything, that's not on site, but because there's so many big topics, there'll be future sessions where some other folks will get into some of those things. So, we'll kind of keep it more towards the areas of, link building and local SEO specifically today. And also I want to preface with any of this stuff that I throw out here, there are tons of resources online on blogs and other various places where you can spend hours researching all these little topics. So if I bring up something that you have no clue what I'm saying or technical terms, just do a Google search for it and you'll find some information on it. But yeah, I think the first thing to touch on is just, what's going on with offsite SEO these days. And there are a lot of things. I have a list of several topics that we can get into, and we could spend a whole hour on each of those if we wanted to. We won't. But the first thing that I usually, when someone asks what's going on with offsite SEO or with local specifically, and when I say local, we're talking about, if you're optimizing for a business that has a brick and mortar location, that's what we're talking about when we say local. But the first thing that I bring up usually is something called the local search ranking factors. Do a Google search for that. You'll find what I'm talking about. And this is an annual study that has been done for the past, I guess, about 10 years now, where some of the top experts in the industry are polled on what they think is important for ranking well, whatever rank means anymore. We'll get to that in a bit, I'm sure. But what's important for ranking well in local search. And it slightly changes every year, but some of the foundational things remain fairly consistent over time. So if you really want to get in depth with local SEO, go read the ranking factors, and I can touch on a few of the big things in the most recent report. The most recent one was actually published about almost a year ago. It was in April 2017. I just asked Darren, the guy who puts it together, a couple days ago when the next one is coming out, and he said he's been busy, so it might not be for a couple months. So this is what we've got for the meantime. But as far as like what's happening in local SEO, what's changed, one of the biggest things has to do with what results show up when people are performing local searches based on where they are physically. So I don't have the numbers in front of me off the top of my head, but mobile Google searches have surpassed desktop searches. And so obviously everyone is trying to go mobile first with their website optimization and offsite optimization. And it used to be where if you entered or if you included a geographic term in a search when you were performing it, that would tell Google, okay, they're looking for businesses in this area. But now it's where you're physically located. And if there are any businesses on the block that you're searching from, they're going to show you businesses there. The bummer part about this is that it's not always the searchers don't always care about what businesses are located right next to them. So if you're searching for, a restaurant, you might want results for one that's very close. But if you're searching for, say, a lawyer, we work with lawyers all the time because we do marketing for them. The user doesn't necessarily care about the lawyer that's right down the street. They just want the best lawyer, and they might be willing to drive 15 miles to go and get them. So I think that's one of the big things. And Kevin, feel free to interrupt me as we're going on here if you want to add more or ask more questions, because I'll just keep on going.
Yeah, no, I will certainly jump in there when I feel like I've got something to ask or contribute, no doubt.
Cool. The next big thing that we're starting to see a shift more and more, and this started a couple of years ago, was people will ask me like, what should I focus on tactics wise to perform well in local search? And it's slightly shifted within the past couple of years more towards actually link building. So the answer I used to give would be something like, you should build some citations for your business. So that's getting your name, address, and phone number mentioned in as many quality places as possible. But now it's more towards there's such a tight relationship between the local part of Google's algorithm and the organic part, where they're almost indistinguishable. And so building links is actually really the way to perform well in local search.
So if I can jump in here, Kerry, it used to, for the longest time, link building was sort of the most important part of it. It's like you needed to be building links. And then it seems like because that got so manipulated that it sort of seemed like the search engines were backing away from that a little bit. But you're saying that that's coming back to being one of the primary factors.
Yeah, it's when we talk about local SEO, the answer is yes. If we're talking about just trying to perform well in organic search, meaning just to have your website listed high, you're right that it kind of leveled off as far as an important factor. So if you're a brick and mortar business, yes, links have actually become more important. But if you're like, say, an e-commerce business where you don't have your local listings out there on the web and you're just a website, it hasn't increased or decreased, I would say, just because there's a lot of other things that I know Allison talked about in her previous Fireside chat. So,
and again, we talk about quality links. That's always the thing. I guess what I'm thinking out loud here is we don't want to tell people to go and join link building schemes. We want there to be some kind of an organic link process, and like maybe from the Chamber of Commerce or local directories or other businesses or people that, that kind of thing, not, oh, hey, I've just bought a link somewhere. Does that get the same kind of red flags as it does in organic search?
Yes, absolutely. So the same rules apply if you're trying to optimize for local SEO when you're link building as does for organic SEO. And to be completely honest, it's sort of it even feels strange for me to talk about them as two separate things, because most local marketers in the industry, they don't really distinguish between the two. So yes, definitely same principles apply. You want quality links. You don't want to be purchasing them for the most part. You don't want to be doing any black hat stuff, and they should all be earned links. They should be ones that are built organically, you could say. And so, sponsoring organization, chamber of commerce, the things like that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a challenging aspect of this whole business is getting the good quality links. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it can take hours upon hours upon hours to get one link. However, oftentimes it's worth it if you get a high quality link. One of the best examples of something that we do for our clients often is we'll encourage them to sponsor a scholarship, and that takes actual money, obviously, and it takes a lot of coordination and a lot of administrative work. And you'll get one link. It may even be a temporary link sometimes, unless it's an ongoing scholarship. But yeah, that's the life of digital marketing. So no one said it was easy.
If you get a link from a .edu domain, then that's normally a high quality link, and that's going to be valuable. So like if we had links coming from our program page to businesses that were providing scholarships for our students or something like that, that kind of link is extremely valuable because the .edu domains are seen, or .gov, or some of those others are seen as highly reliable organizations.
Exactly. And it makes sense that it takes so much work to get them because Google considers those high value. Like it should not be easy to get one of those links. So it's basically Google rewarding you for saying, okay, you did the work to get a link from that, then we'll give you an extra bit of link juice than a .com site.
So when we talk about link juice, for those that aren't real familiar with this, link juice is the sort of the credits that you get from Google or the other search engines that help you to raise up in the search engine results pages.
Right.
Okay.
So that kind of segues into talking about, well, how important are citations now? And there have been a lot of studies done actually on this in the past couple of years. Darren, the guy I mentioned earlier, who puts together this local search ranking factors, he did a study, I think it was 2 years ago, on creating a couple, or probably actually I don't remember how many, 5 or 6 fake businesses, and built up citations. So mentions of name, address, phone number on them for the web, and just to see like how much impact do citations really have versus something like links. And other people have done studies, and I did actually a mini study with about 10 of our clients to see we cleaned up a bunch of citations for our clients on the web because they had some incorrect information. We just want to see, okay, does it actually improve, local ranking or not? And it was kind of a wash. It was like, yeah, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. With any kind of test like that, there's so many factors going on that it's impossible to know exactly how much you impacted it. And especially with what I talked about earlier of, proximity, where you're searching from, and that sort of thing. There are tools where we can see what other people see when they're, we can see what other people are seeing depending on where they search from. So like I can, perform a search using one of the tools as if I'm in Menominee, Wisconsin. But even so, with all these variables, it's just difficult to be conclusive. And so all that being said, citations, they're just not as important as they used to be. However, it's never a bad idea to make sure your business's name, address, phone number is correct on the web, because if someone stumbles upon it, of course, you don't want them calling the wrong phone number, going to the wrong address. And it never hurts to have more exposure for your business everywhere on the web. One of the things that I think is going to be more important in the future, and this is kind of getting into like what the future looks like, but there's two types of, this is getting into the really nitty gritty of local SEO, but there's two types of citations. There's structured citations, which are the ones that you'll see on local listing websites like MapQuest, Yelp, and Google My Business and so on. And then there's unstructured citations, and those are mentions of your name, address, or phone number anywhere. It could be in a blog post, it could be in a forum, it could be in a news article, and sometimes even without a backlink to your website. So just a mention. And these actually provide value because Google is smart enough to associate that information with your Google My Business page, with your website, and those two are the two sources of truth, you could say, for your business. So I think those will increase in importance over time.
So really quickly there, when we're talking about the citations and the Google My Business and the website, so you say that the two areas of truth are your website or your property and your listing on Google My Business or I can't remember what the one for Bing is, but those are sort of places where Google recognizes you as an entity.
That's exactly right. And I should have clarified that because source of truth, it's all relative, right? It depends on, source of truth based on who. So yes, when it comes to Google, those are the two sources of truth. If you are talking about maybe some other third-party website like Yelp, for example, or some of the other popular listing sites out there like Yellow Pages, their source of truth might be your website and the what's called the data aggregator, where they get your information. So there are 4 big known data aggregators where they sell business information to these third-party websites out there that purchase it from them, and that's their source of truth because those aggregators have done their homework. They look at business records, they call the business to confirm the information for them. So I would put those two categories of what Google looks at and what the other listing sites look at as far as source of truth goes.
So if I can go off on a little tangent here, I talk to a lot of small businesses, and the ones that don't have somebody who's dedicated to managing their website or managing their online presence so much. And what I've heard recently is that a certain percentage of businesses are deciding not to have their own domain website, and they're relying on the Google My Businesses and their directories and the Yelps and those kind of things as the place where they are going to have their presence online because they just don't have the resources to manage a website. What are your thoughts about that?
Great question. And the answer, like many things in digital marketing, is it depends. But I think it can work depending on the type of business you're in and the region that you're in and your competition and lots of other factors. I think the things to consider are what's going to be helpful for users. Would it be important for them to have a website that they can go to find information? There are some verticals that if you, for example, hotels, Google has built out the search engine results page so much that you sometimes don't even have to go to the hotel's website to get the information that you need. You can book a hotel directly from the search engine results page for some of them. But it's still good to have a website so that Google has a place to pull information from. Sometimes Google uses your website to know what you do as a business. Another example of that is because I do marketing for lawyers. When you're creating and optimizing a Google My Business page, you'll want to select your business category. So that's just what your business does. And there's only, I think today there's like 22 or 23 categories that apply to law firms. We have a lot of clients who do certain types of practices that are not covered by those different types of categories. They're very broad categories like personal injury, family law, so on. But for example, there's not a category for, at least I don't think there is right now, for entertainment law. But we have some clients who perform entertainment law. How in the world is Google going to know to show them in a local search result if someone is doing a local search for entertainment law near Minneapolis? Google looks at the website for that. And so that's where a website is important for Google. So yeah, consider if it's important to the user, if it's important to Google, and all those other variables. I would just have one just to have one, not because I'm old school, but because it's just another source of information for Google. And if we go back to what we're talking about with backlinks, how are you going to build backlinks to a website if you don't have one? If it's such an important local SEO factor. But I have seen it be successful, having just focused on Google My Business, on Facebook, on Yelp, for very select types of businesses.
Yeah, the ones that I'm specifically talking about are like restaurants and bars and sort of those. I need to do business with them right now. I know that they're going to have a menu, that kind of thing. So it's, I guess it would be those frequent turnaround service kind of things, places that you visit frequently, and that's where I've seen that. And they just don't have somebody on staff in most restaurants or bars to dedicate to all those all the many things that we look at when we're talking about SEO.
Yeah, and if I was a business owner and I was starting a business, and if for some reason I just didn't have time to build a website or hire someone to do it and just had to go this route of not having one, I would focus on, probably, get those local listings out there, but then focus on doing Facebook paid ads. And someone else will talk about that in a future session of these, but that's, I think, one of the big ways that those types of businesses can bring in customers.
All right, so that was a tangent. Where were we headed before we went off on that?
Yeah, there's actually one more thing that is slightly related to that, is another side tangent, and this is another just kind of happening, a current thing that's going on, specifically with Google My Business. If you don't want to build your own website, Google My Business offers a free website that you can build, and it's very bare bones. It's literally one page. It does get indexed by Google, meaning it can rank in search results. I built one just as a test, just to see how it looks and everything. And some of them actually look, it's a standard format, so you can't customize it very well. But you can put as much information as a potential customer might need to know enough about you, and give you a call or visit the business. And what's happening is, I think as of last count, as of like in December, there was over 1 million of these websites out there already, and it hasn't been around for long. And most of these sites were for businesses in developing countries and other countries over in Asia, and I think the Middle East as well. So that's an option for folks. I wouldn't recommend it for anyone who's starting a business that they want to be around for a while, and it's not like a quick turnaround, kind of like you were mentioning, Kevin. But that's another option.
Okay.
So where else? What else is happening? We talked about NAP. Yeah. So, and I think the other just change as a result of some of these local search ranking factors, because we were talking about that report, is Google is putting more energy internally and within their own company towards the local arena. So some background history: Google launched Google Maps in 2004, and that was always its own separate division internally from the traditional Google search side of things. And so there was a melding so that we got local search results. And then when Google Plus came around in 2011, the next year, Google tried to integrate the social aspect, into that. And so there were sort of like 3 areas almost kind of melded into one. It just did not work well. And since 2013, there's kind of been this separation of the social aspect, and it's pretty much all gone up until this point. And so now the local portion is called Google My Business, and it's changed names several times over the years. And last year alone, Google made more changes, both aesthetically and function and feature wise, as I've seen, than any other year easily. When it came to Google My Business, they just rolled out lots of new features, and so they're clearly devoting a lot of resources to Google My Business these days. And that's that'll probably continue so long as they keep resources there, and they'll pull some things back, and they'll put new things in, and they'll always be changing things. But that's another thing that's happening.
Yeah, it's definitely a Google thing to make changes. I teach a number of classes where we use Google tools, and I've just set a disclaimer out in my syllabus. It's like, if you're using a Google tool, it is likely to look different and maybe function different than what I've showed you how to do, because things change all the time. Google Analytics has got new reports out. They've changed the format of the homepage for these new reports. And it's like, okay, that is actually really helpful. But if you had designed materials based upon how it worked yesterday, that's just not the approach to success with using Google tools. It's like, let's just, put the big principles out there, because they're going to still be the same. But the interface is changing all the time with pretty much any tool that you use that's coming from Google.
That's right. We have a team of, in our business within Thomson Reuter's team, of about 100 digital marketers doing various things. And it would be a full-time job for one person easily to update our training documentation for when new folks start. Every single time I have to train a new person in, I have to update the training document. That's just part of the deal. It also reminds me of a new resource that if you float around in the local arena long enough, you'll come across someone named Joy Hawkins, and she's very well known. And she has her own local marketing business, and she has put together this cool resource called, I think, I'm not sure the official title. It's basically a timeline of Google My Business updates. And I think she probably started it just because there had been so many last year, and the timeline only goes far back as the beginning of this year, I think. And so it's brand new. She just started it, but that's like a good thing to keep an eye on. And if you look at it right now, and by the way, her company name is Sterling Sky. If you need to look for the website, if you look at it right now, I think there's a change like every 2 weeks, and they're fairly significant. Since she started that timeline. So that's just that'll give you a taste of just how frequently stuff happens. And I come in like every week, and one of my team members will be like, "Hey, Kerry, have you seen this? Hey, Kerry, have you seen that?" And
I'm gonna throw that up.
Yeah.
I'll just share it. I've pulled it up, the website. I believe that everybody should see that right now. There we go. So let me see. So this is feature changes to Google My Business 2017. As I scroll through, it's got 35 that were listed for 2017. This is actually cool. I didn't know about this site. Tips and strategy updates. So it's not just, it's also got tactics that they're talking about. That's cool. But look at that. It just goes on and on and on. Great resource. Cool.
Yeah, and I think if you, I think the feature changes, or one of them, if you go into it, it has like a visual timeline where you can actually look at each of the changes that happen. And I see she has something for 2017 there, so maybe she did start it a while ago. Maybe it wasn't just the start of this year. Anyway, it's fun to go through and look at everything that's happened.
Okay. All right. Well, let's not go down that rabbit hole right now.
Yep.
Because that could become another whole show in itself, just looking at that document.
Indeed. So other things that are happening, and like I said, I mean, we could just keep going on and on and on. But one of the pretty important ones for a select few type of businesses, and for the students who are part of the course this semester, I don't know if I saw any businesses that fell under these categories, but I still need to bring it up because it might expand someday into other types of businesses. But Google started testing certain types of local results for home services back, man, must have been in 2016 now. And they rolled it out to a few more different categories. I think I have a list here of the different types of businesses that they do it with today. Yeah, so it is currently for locksmiths, plumbers, electricians, HVAC, and garage door services. So it's very select few. And these types of businesses happen to be ones that marketers or whoever does the local optimization for these businesses are oftentimes very spammy for some reason. And so I think Google might have specifically chosen them partly for that reason, because these home service ads require these businesses to verify their information and basically work with Google with an extra layer of, I guess, verification rather than the normal verification required for a Google My Business page. So if you do a search for any of these types of businesses in a select list of areas, it looks like it's in Phoenix, a bunch of cities in California, Miami, Atlanta, Chicago, Boston, Detroit, New York, Philadelphia, Dallas, Seattle, and DC. And so if you search for any of these businesses in those areas, you'll probably see these home service ads. And so I think that the only local results in those areas for these type of businesses are these local ads. And so these businesses pay to be shown in those results. So it's like a local paid type of result. And I'm sorry, I think they may only pay for the leads that they get through them. I'm not sure. I haven't done a ton of research into it, just mostly poking around searching.
So it's like, is it presented in like a snack pack at the top?
Yeah.
I did a search for Phoenix. I can share that just to see. There we go.
Okay, that doesn't. Oh yeah, so it looks like it's showing both. It's showing the home service ads at the top, a regular paid ad, and then the local results. So, but the important thing here is that those home service ads are showing above everything else.
Right, bang, right there.
Mm-hmm. And so there's if you're not showing up there, you're definitely missing out if you're a business in that area. And so obviously you can look at more than just those free results as you're looking at right now. So that's good.
Yeah. And yeah, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, and I was just going to say that this is not only impacts these type of businesses quite a bit, but also users, because if you see one of those results there, you know that they're a legitimate business, and normally they're pretty good to work with, because I think they'll only take ones that are reviewed well and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I see the reviews. The lowest review that's in the list is a 4.9.
Yep.
Way down there's a 4.2, but I don't see. Yeah, so cool. It's good to know.
Yeah, so we'll see if it rolls out to other types of businesses at some point.
All right.
At the end of the day, Google looks out for Google, and this was a way to make some more money.
Yeah, that conversation always comes up. When you're dealing with Google, you're dealing with the gorilla in the room. They own this digital marketing realm. So it's like years ago, people get freaked out about how much does Google know about me, and it's a reasonable freak out, I guess. Maybe not freak out, but it's reasonable to be concerned about how much information they know about you. But sometimes, and this is what I did, I just got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm playing in Google Sandbox. I'm teaching in Google Sandbox. I'm just going to go, and my browser is always logged in. They know more about me than I do. And, the phone will tell you, things about yourself that Google knows that you didn't know. And it's like, okay, am I going to fight it? Am I going to play with it? Am I going to be at some balance somewhere in between? But it is always a factor. And one of the frustrating things, if you're a business, is when they scrape your information and use that in search results, and they don't send you to the page. Because if you're making your money off of them coming to your page, if that's where you get your conversion, and they take the information but don't give you the lead, that's where some commercial entities get really upset with Google because you really don't have any control over that.
Yeah, since we're on the topic of frustrations with Google, I mean, I could give a few different stories here. The first is actually just a comment when you're asking about, having a website versus not having a website. That's another reason why you want to have a website, because if you're relying solely on your Google My Business page and, maybe a couple other local listings, not wise at all, especially if Google, for example, suspend your Google My Business page for no reason at all, saying that you violated a guideline. Had that happen plenty of times.
Oh,
and,
man.
and we have clients that they'll get upset, like, why am I not showing in the 3-pack anymore? And we have to kind of reframe like what the marketing strategy is. It's like, yep, it's great to show up well in local search, but we cannot rely solely upon that. We got to look at holistically.
And that's really, I mean, that's a lesson that everybody should take away from anything with digital marketing is if you are relying upon Google as your only source of getting traffic and they change, then there's a really good chance that at some point you are going to go out of business because of the change that Google made. And I actually know people who have done that back in the days when what do they call it? Affiliate marketing was a big thing. I knew a guy who built a business out of scraping data from e-commerce sites and then repackaging them and then getting referring people back to that site and getting a person. Well, everything that he had was duplicate content. And so when I can't remember which algorithm came out, he went from thousands of hits a day down to maybe 20 because he just disappeared. And so that business went belly up because Google decided that that wasn't the kind of business that fit their model of what was a good business. And so that's a really good lesson that you share is you can't put all your eggs in one basket unless you don't mind juggling baskets and, oh, that basket quit working, I'll get a new basket.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of the way SEO used to be, right? Like almost everything in SEO you could say used to be black hat, compared to today almost. It was this sort of dark magic type thing. And to your point of, unless you just want to, focus on these individual baskets and you want to try to juggle them, great, go for it. It's not sustainable. It can work for a very short period of time. I see it work. There is tons of spammy stuff out there. And it works for a little while, but eventually it's going to catch up to you.
It's kind of funny when you look at the history of search engines and search engine optimization. Whatever the day before Google launched, if you were going to be a marketer, you had to have good content. It had to be related to the product that you were trying to sell or whatever it was that you were in business doing. It had to be good. It had to have the user in mind. And then Google came on board and the game changed from being marketing to being search engine optimization. And I actually, while I live in this world of search engine optimization, I really don't like the term search engine optimization. I think search marketing is a better term for what we do because the optimization, the idea goes back to all the days of the black hat where it's like, okay, Google made a rule. If I do this, then I am going to show up in the listings. Okay, then that rule changed. And so now here's a new set of rules. Here's a new algorithm. I got to change the way that my content is so that the search engine displays it rather than focusing on good content on and off the site so that users were able to find you to do what they wanted. And so that's when you look at the history of search engines, that's the thing that really stands out to me as an educator is that we've gone from, something like 1995 until 2015, 2016. And during that period, it was chasing the search engines. Well, now the search engines have gotten smart enough that it's back to the way the world was the day before Google launched. And that is, if you want people to find your company, you need to have good content, and it needs to be targeted to the audience that you want to use.
Couldn't agree more. And about 4 or 5 years ago, our company changed. We used to have the term SEO in our job titles, and that was removed and replaced with digital marketer. Part of that was to look at things holistically, like I mentioned earlier, but part of it probably was that stigma. I haven't told people that I do SEO in years. I never say that, like I'm digital marketing, because it is sort of that, like, ooh, it's kind of the shady business, right?
Yeah.
And also interesting is some of that perspective that's sort of, and this is another side tangent thing, but that perspective that's carried over for some people. If I did tell someone I do SEO, there's kind of this perception that that is sort of like just sprinkling in the secret sauce of, like, oh, so you can make me show up #1 on search results. Like, maybe in 2007 I could have, it's a little different now.
The only way I can do that now is with paid search.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I tell people.
Yep. All right. We are approaching, I don't know exactly where we are, but we're approaching the sort of 45-minute or so guess. Let's, with in mind that we want to stay probably within an hour on this, let's, where do you want to go with the rest of this conversation, or anything else you wanted to talk about that we haven't hit on yet?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little things that we, things that we could touch on. We didn't talk about specifically any algorithm updates. I think it's important to mention the Penguin portion of the algorithm, just because we've sort of been talking about links and offsite SEO, and in the past, Google would make these updates at set periods of time, and I think Kevin alluded to that just a little bit ago. Where if you were doing spammy tactics and your site got hit by one of these algorithm updates, you would see a drop in your search traffic and rank and so on and so forth. Now with Penguin, which looks for spammy link building tactics, it's just an ongoing thing. It's just always on. There aren't like any big massive updates anymore, and so if you're doing spammy link building, like we talked about way back at the beginning, Google's going to catch it a lot quicker than they used to in the past. So that's a good thing to know.
I'm kind of just seeing where you want to go with this.
Yeah.
If we were to look into the crystal ball going forward, what are the things that we should be watching for that are coming over the horizon? They may or may not be on us yet.
Yeah, and the easy thing to touch on is just more stuff, more things, more features in Google My Business. Like I mentioned before, just they roll out so many last year, and there's going to be more opportunities, and keeping up to date on those. As a small business owner, you definitely need to be logging into your Google My Business account on a regular basis, like easily once a month. But I mean, I would probably do it every week. There's features like question and answers that show up on Google My Business pages now. And so if a user asks a question, it's just going to sit there unanswered unless you as a business owner log in and answer it. And I just found that for a couple of my clients yesterday. I'm like, oh, shoot, someone asked questions. I got to get back to them. And other things, you got to keep an eye on reviews. We haven't talked about reviews here, but we'll talk about that in another session. But, you want to respond to that. So just, logging in on a regular basis, that's one thing. Again, with reviews, which we'll talk about some other time, those are just going to continue to be more and more important. One of the sort of futuristic type things that's thrown around these days is something called, I'll call it entity authority. If you do a Google search for that, it might not give you exactly what you're looking for. You'd probably have to add something else like entity authority in Google or something like that. And this will sort of bleed into reputation management that we'll talk about in a different session. But it sort of relates to what I mentioned earlier with citations and having unstructured citations. So, mention of your name that's not on a local listing site, mention in a news service or blog or whatever. And just it's this idea that Google has, we mentioned how maybe your website and Google My Business page are the source of truth for your business from Google's perspective, but it's this idea that Google has this sort of back-end cluster of data. Mike Blumenthal, one of the leading experts on local, will call it this cluster of data for your business that no one can see, and it's sort of everything Google knows about you as an entity, and that's where we get into sort of big brother creepiness. But it's making sure that your entity authority in the eyes of Google is strong. And this is such a nebulous thing to talk about because it's like, okay, great, how do I do that? Well, it's all the things that we've talked about and everything else. It's just making sure everything is clean on the website, making sure you look good, making sure reviews are positive, your website. It's just like everything. And this is why like every aspect of digital marketing is just so connected now that it's difficult to separate it all, and it's because of this entity authority topic.
So I'll ask you the same question that I ended asking Allison Anderson in the onsite. So with all these changes, do you feel like off the site SEO is getting easier or harder to do?
Well, by default, I feel like it's both at the same time, because it's easier from the aspect of the things that I've known how to do for several years. I've been doing because I'm more experienced at, as an individual. As someone on the outside coming into it, overall it's more difficult. Yeah, definitely. Just because there's so many things to learn and you have to keep your finger on all these different pulses. But then for me, because I've been in it a while, the difficult aspect is just all the new changes coming, and that's never going to stop. So the ability to adjust to the changes, that's gotten a little bit easier. So there's all these different aspects there. Yep, it's more difficult. Yep, it's easier. But for someone coming into it today, like, I don't know, yeah, it just feels like there's so much more to learn. But at the same time, a lot of the foundational elements, like we talked about way back at the beginning again, are just the same. Like you talk about content, when you're talking about on-site, that's always been important. Yeah, it may have been easier to spam out your website and rank well, but I don't think that will ever go away as quality content being important, regardless of the type of content that might change, because content now mean video or whatever else. So that was sort of a non-answer answer.
Well, but it's an honest answer. Yeah. I think that one of the key things to have as a takeaway, and the reason that we're doing these fireside chats, is to give people who are thinking about a career in these kind of areas the chance to see, this is not going to go away. It's going to take more and more people, and it's going to take people who have knowledge that up until this point, the only way to get it was by doing it. That's why we offer this degree in digital marketing technology, because it's really hard to get to that base level where you can say, yeah, I'm literate in a base level of digital marketing. On the job takes a long time. So I want to thank you for your time, Kerry. Kerry has been involved with this search engine optimization course that I teach at UW Stout from the very beginning back in 2012. So we've been running this class for several years, and it doesn't get easier. We add more and more every year. We basically have to tell people that stepping into this area is kind of like stepping into a fire hydrant and trying to get a drink. At first, you're just going to get washed away. But as you spend time doing it, gain more information, then all of a sudden you start becoming an expert, because everybody else is still looking at that fire hydrant and afraid to step into it to take that first drink. And I'll say, if you're going to be drinking from a fire hydrant, don't try to go to the middle first. Start on the outside. That way you don't get whiplash. So we've got a couple more of these coming up. We're going to be doing, this is the second one. We're going to be doing another fireside chat on social and video. Then we're going to be doing another one on reputation management. And then we're going to be doing one on paid search. So that's what we've got scheduled for Most of those are going to be in end of March and April that we'll be recording those. So once again, thank you very much, Kerry. You're a great resource. It's always a pleasure. I love that every time we have a conversation, I learn from you. And I really appreciate what you and the folks at Thomson Reuters provide for our program. And these Fireside Chats are just the latest of that. And thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks.
All right. So that's a wrap on this one. I'm Kevin Tharp. I will talk to you at the next Fireside Chat. And you can follow our, I've got a playlist on my channel where all these will be. Like us, follow us. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.